This is now Tropical Storm Alberto.
Tonight, the triple weather threat facing much of the country. Storms, wildfires, and dangerous heat. The Gulf Coast prepares for the first named storm of the season.
We hope for a miracle.
Plus, we get a first-hand look at the destruction of the deadly wildfires in New Mexico still burning out of control.
We have certain areas of town where every home's been taken out.
And most of the United States bakes under a massive heat wave. We've got it all covered. The CBS Evening News starts now. Sweltering, dangerous heat here in Washington and across the East Coast tonight. And that's just one of three life-threatening weather threats facing Americans right now. Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for being with us. Out west, wildfires are raging, leaving behind scenes like this. Melted metal, charred cars, smoke still rising in a New Mexico town that lost more than 1,000 homes and buildings. To the Gulf Coast, which is feeling Alberto's fury tonight, the first named storm of the season is bringing heavy rains, flooding, and high winds to Texas. And more than 80 million people in the east are sweating it out under the heat dome tonight. Temperatures are so extreme, listen to this, it feels like triple digits in northern Maine. That's hotter than Miami, and it's not even summer yet. CBS News is on the ground covering all of it, and we start with Omar Villafranca, who witnessed the wildfire destruction firsthand.
As two raging fires flank this cabin community, Ruidoso Assistant Fire Chief Ross Coleman took us behind the flames for a first look. Home after home burned to the ground. More than 1,400 structures destroyed.
There were about 5 or 6 houses right in here, and our fire chief just lost his house.
He's not alone. Roughly 8,000 people have not yet been allowed back, including Connie Loya and her husband Frank.
I don't know whether we're going to have a home.
We were engulfed in smoke. That scared me to death.
The flames from the South Fork fire came from that way over onto this ridge and destroyed this hotel. The flames were steady but very intense, so intense that cars that were here in the parking lot started melting. You can see some of the aluminum here running off, but the fire didn't stop there.
Both the South Fork and Salt fires remain 0% contained and have already torched more than 23,000 acres, an area larger than the island of Manhattan. Nationwide, wildfires have scorched more than 2.1 million acres this year, far more than the 10-year average of 1.4 million. Pamela Bonner captured these stunning images as she fled to safety. Now she's hoping there's a town to go back to.
The best you can do is just try to not fall apart, and that's all you can do is just hope.
Late this afternoon, signs of relief as storm clouds dropped rain in the area.
Storm clouds are starting to clear out, but not before dumping some much needed rain in the area, and crews are hoping that rain will help them get the fire under control. But now there's another issue, Nora. All that rain means there's a flash flood emergency, which means some of those roads may not be passable.
Wow, thinking about everyone there. Omar Villafranca, thank you so much. Now to the first named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season. Tropical storm Alberto is churning through the Gulf right now, and it is expected to make landfall early tomorrow, bringing torrential rains and powerful winds to Texas. CBS's Dave Malkoff is in Corpus Christi, which is on track to get hit hard.
The storm is hours away from landfall in Mexico, but the effects are already being felt. In Surfside, south of Houston, rain totals have already topped nearly 4 inches. Search and rescue teams were out on the water raft looking to rescue people, and they found 2 women stranded in a car, the water nearly up to their tires. They both got out. Some residents were forced to evacuate.
Oh, the whole trash can got moved.
Overnight, water started gushing from the ocean onto the roads, and the forecast calls for even more storm surge. This is an abandoned vehicle. You can see the water sweeping almost all the way to the top. In Galveston, several Juneteenth events were rescheduled due to flooded streets. In Jamaica Beach, flooding closed most streets to traffic. In Corpus Christi, our crew drove closer to the marina. You could see the water almost spilling onto the streets. But the rain did not stop essential worker Tony Juarez from delivering porta potties in the tropical storm band. What's it like in the middle of all this?
It's rain and rain, you know. It's not fun, but we're out here doing it.
This street in the city now looks like a river, and with Alberta way out there in the Gulf, slowly creeping towards landfall, there is still plenty of time, Nora, to dump rain and storm surge on parts of Texas.
Wow, Dave Malkoff with a first-hand look. Thank you. More than a dozen cities hit new record highs today, including Boston, Hartford, Connecticut, and Gary, Indiana, as 18 states broil under the heat dome. In some places, it felt as hot as 110 degrees. CBS's Lilia Luciano reports from a brutally hot Philadelphia.
In the city of brotherly love, the heat came early.
It's super hot.
Oh, yeah.
EMT Danielle Green says he's bracing for a busy season.
Are you making those knocks earlier in the season, you feel, this year?
Yeah, last summer, it was actually summer when we started getting our heat strokes or our heat exhaustion.
The city has already declared its first heat health emergency of the year through Saturday. In Vermont,
we're out here for the next couple days just trying to beat the heat, get out of the heat dome.
There are parts of the state today that are almost 10 degrees hotter than Miami. Meteorologist Shel Winkley with Climate Central says the shifting weather patterns have a culprit.
Talk to us about the impact of human activity on these heat patterns.
As we pollute our atmosphere with things like carbon, extra carbon from burning oil and natural gas and coal, what we're essentially doing is trapping in a lot of this heat, adds that wool blanket over the top of us. So that heat is basically trapped. There's nowhere for it to go.
And what's happening, too, is that the nighttime temperatures are also rising. So there's not enough time for the cities, for the land, for people to recover before the sun comes out. So it only keeps getting hotter. Nora.
Important explanation. Lilia Luciano, thank you so much. An intense manhunt is underway in Arkansas for a suspected killer. Officials released these photos of 50-year-old Stacy Lee Drake of Alabama, who was last seen outside a motel in Morrilton, Arkansas. He's wanted in connection with the carjacking murders of 3 people in Oklahoma and is also wanted separately on additional charges. Officials say anyone who sees Drake should not approach him and call 911. Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, the leaders of rogue nations Russia and North Korea, signed an agreement today to help each other in the event of aggression against their countries. Details of the pact haven't been made public, but it comes as Putin desperately looks for military hardware to prolong his invasion of Ukraine. Here's CBS's Imtiaz Tayeb.
It was a chance for Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to flaunt their friendship. And flaunt they did. Massive, carefully choreographed crowds cheered as they waved flags in Pyongyang's central square, which was dominated by enormous portraits of Putin and Kim. But it wasn't the over-the-top pomp and circumstance or the ride in the limousine Putin gifted to Kim that set alarm bells ringing in Washington and beyond. It was Putin's announcement of what he called a breakthrough new agreement with Kim that provides, Putin said, for mutual assistance in the event of aggression, without specifying what aggression meant or what it could mean militarily. At a lavish banquet laden with local delicacies, the leaders of 2 of the world's most heavily sanctioned nations did seem to agree on weapons and lots of them. In 2022, Putin, desperate for artillery for his grinding war in Ukraine, turned to Kim for help. Western intelligence officials are reportedly warning Moscow is now expected to receive around 5 million rounds of ammunition. And that's not all.
We know North Korean ballistic missiles are still being used to hit Ukrainian targets.
Pyongyang will get food and military aid and help with missile technology. But as Putin prepared to leave for his next stop, it's clear he's not only in search of weapons, but also friends, something Kim Jong-un seems more than happy to offer. Imtiaz Tayeb, CBS News, London.
Now a look at tonight's other top stories, starting with news from Capitol Hill and an update on the long-running investigation into Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. CBS's Scott McFarland has our new reporting.
Multiple sources tell CBS News 4 women have informed the Ethics Committee they attended parties that included sex and drugs that Congressman Matt Gaetz also attended.
We've also learned the committee has Gaetz's Venmo transactions, allegedly showing payments to the women.
The 42-year-old Republican said he'll be exonerated and previously blamed then House Speaker Kevin McCarthy for the probe before leading the effort to oust McCarthy.
I fear no investigation. That was simply something that Kevin McCarthy tried to use as leverage.
The Justice Department previously investigated Gates, but no charges were filed.
Investigators are trying to find out what caused a home to explode. With more than a dozen people inside, the leading theory is natural gas. Connor White of our CBS Syracuse affiliate reports on the conditions of those who were in the house.
Nora, a construction crew is on scene here in Syracuse, New York, tearing down what's left of this house after a powerful explosion on Tuesday afternoon. Officials say 13 people were injured when the 2.5-story home collapsed. 9 of the victims are children, some in critical condition, including an 8-month-old baby. One child was trapped in a car that was buried under the rubble. The fire chief here says when help arrived, there was a heavy gas odor and downed power lines.
And Louisiana's governor just signed a new bill that orders all public classrooms to display the 10 Commandments in large, easily readable font. CBS's Elise Preston explains.
Tonight, Nora, Louisiana has become the first state in the country to require a poster-sized copy like this one of the 10 Commandments be displayed in every public school classroom. Republican Governor Jeff Landry signed the bill into law today. In a statement, the ACLU says it's planning to file a lawsuit saying the new law is blatantly unconstitutional and violates the separation of church and state. Supporters say private donations will be used to put up the displays, not state funds.
Thanks to our CBS News teams across the country. As we head into the summer months, illnesses from tick bites are on the rise. CBS medical contributor Dr. Celine Gounder teamed up with a group of researchers to better understand the risks. And in tonight's Health Watch, she has some tips to keep you and your family safe.
Here in the Chaparral Wildlife Management Area in South Texas, there's a hidden danger: ticks.
Ticks embed themselves in your skin.
These hunters are part of a unique collaboration with Baylor University and the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department.
Every deer's got ticks on it.
Checking the animals they hunt for ticks and then sending those ticks to be tested for infections.
We worked with the hunter population because we thought they could be at high risk. And in doing that, we realized they were exposed to all kinds of bugs.
Sarah Gunter is the program's director.
We want to know what the risk is in an area, because if we're going to diagnose people based off of symptoms, you have to know that there's a risk for that disease in the area.
It's a risk Tony Galbo has spent years raising awareness of.
She was awesome. Everybody flocked to her.
His 5-year-old daughter Gabby died after developing the tick-borne disease Rocky Mountain spotted fever 12 years ago. He says her illness wasn't diagnosed in time.
Mandatory reporting, mandatory mapping, and public awareness. That's all I'm asking for. If we can start doing that, there's going to be less and less cases missed.
This map shows the increase over the past 20 years in reported cases of Lyme disease, the most common but not the only tick-borne infection in the U.S.
We're finding ticks move into new areas.
And why is that?
Things like changes in the seasons, so summer's getting hotter, summer's getting longer, allow ticks to move into areas that maybe it was historically too cold for them to be. People moving into areas where they historically haven't had people can put individuals in closer contact to animals and wildlife and result in what we call spillover of disease.
Back in Chaparral, Jesus Garcia takes precautions before heading out.
You want to spray yourself down, you want to wear the proper clothing.
After coming back inside, run your clothing through the dryer to kill any ticks, and check your body carefully for ticks too.
It's so important to treat immediately for a good clinical outcome.
Tracking and mapping to deter disease. Dr. Celine Gounder, Houston, Texas.
Eye on America is next as we remember Hall of Famer Willie Mays and look at the growing number of African Americans who are hoping to follow in his footsteps. He was one of the best to ever play the game, a dominant power hitter, and arguably the best defensive player of all time. The Say Hey Kid, Willie Mays, died Tuesday at 93. Major League Baseball will honor his life and legacy with a game tomorrow at a ballpark 6 miles from Mays' boyhood home in Alabama, and where he made his pro debut in the Negro Leagues. In tonight's Eye on America, CBS's Major Garrett looks at Mays' career and the declining visibility of African Americans in today's game.
One of the greatest catches in all series history saved the game for the Giants.
Before Willie Mays electrified fans with the New York Giants and made the catch in the 1954 World Series, he patrolled center field at Rickwood Field as a teenager in 1948.
Willie was something else. He had a gift that God gave him.
Reverend William Greason, now almost 100, was Mays' teammate on the Birmingham Black Barons.
The camaraderie that we had on that team, it was out of sight.
When you saw him, did you think, I might be looking at one of the best players of all time?
No, I just wanted to be a friend.
Mays was too young to travel with the Black Barons, who barnstormed the Jim Crow South as a member of the Negro Southern League. At Rickwood Field, which the Black Barons shared with the all-white Birmingham Barons, segregation was the enforced custom.
When we played here, the whites were in right field. When they played, we were out there.
Since 1910, 182 Hall of Famers, black and white, have graced Rickwood's grounds. Legends like Reggie, the Babe, and Hammering Hank. When the St. Louis Cardinals play at Rickwood this week, shortstop Mason Wynn will be among the handful of African-American players on either roster.
Being maybe the only black person on the field, it's going to be pretty special for me to represent that out there.
What does that say about the state of African-Americans in Major League Baseball right now?
I think it just means we need more.
In 1991, 18% of players on opening day rosters were African-American. This season, 6%. But there are signs that's changing.
In 2022, 4 out of the top 5 draft picks were African-American. Major League Baseball has also announced a $150 million investment aimed at increasing black representation in baseball. Earlier this year, Negro League stats were incorporated into baseball's record books.
I think it's cool to have that black representation up there, and I think it's good for the next generation.
Many of those stats happen right here at Rickwood Field.
Randall Woodfin is the mayor of Birmingham.
What happened here is not just black history, it's American history. The greats that came through this place, they literally went on to change what baseball meant.
Major League Baseball planned for Willie Mays to attend the Rickwood game. Now, the field where Mays' baseball dreams began will poetically symbolize the end of that era, and possibly the dawn of a new one. For Eye on America, I'm Major Garrett in Birmingham, Alabama.
Willie Mays, a national treasure. The ancient Stonehenge site is vandalized ahead of the annual Summer Solstice Festival. That's next. 2 environmental activists were arrested at the ancient Stonehenge site in England today after spraying part of the monument with what appears to be orange paint. The protesters say the orange substance is cornstarch that will dissolve away in the rain. The incident comes the day before the annual celebration of the summer solstice at the roughly 5,000-year-old stone circle. Heart of America is next with the grandmother of the Juneteenth holiday.
If you can't watch the CBS Evening News, you can listen. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Finally, tonight's Heart of America as the nation celebrates Juneteenth. 97-year-old Opal Lee, known as the grandmother of Juneteenth, led her annual Walk for Freedom this morning at the African American Museum in Dallas. Today marks the day the last slaves in the United States were freed in Galveston, Texas in 1865, more than 2 years after President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. She wanted everyone to know and never forget that July 4th freed the land, but Juneteenth freed the people. The incredible Opal Lee. She is tonight's Heart of America. Love her. And that's tonight's CBS Evening News. I'm Nora O'Donnell. Good night.